All right, let's talk Michigan Wolverines. It's getting closer and closer to real football right around the corner. Training camp is almost here for Michigan. Guess what? It's an exciting time to be alive. We're seeing a lot of great publicity, a lot of great praise for this Michigan program as they reorient themselves in year two post Harbaugh. And we've got a great report from the Michigan coaching staff, specifically one guy talking about some young players, and one in particular I want to focus on that's going to elevate this Wolverines program to another level. We'll get to that report in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, this Michigan Wolverines program has had a really solid offseason, made a lot of really good moves, reorienting themselves. Year two of Harbaugh, Sherrone Moore, his entire staff done a really great job. But a lot of things are going to hinge on these young guys. And there's a recent interview, courtesy of On3 Sports, talking to newer director of strength and conditioning, Justin Tress, talking about this program, talking about some young guys in particular, and some additional comments just kind of thrown in at the end of one question, I think speaks volumes. Let's go into the report here. Then we'll get into some very interesting data on the other side. Again, this is from On3 Sports. Michigan's ceiling will be dependent on the strides some of its young pieces take too, namely on the offensive line. Tress singled out two potential starting tackles as those who have impressed him the most among the youth movement on the roster. Andrew Sprague is one. Andrew Babalola is one, Tress said. There are countless guys top to bottom. I'd say those two are big ones right off the jump that stand to me. All right, so that should be it, right? He's talking about offensive linemen, talking about young guys. But then at the end here, he just kind of throws in some extra information. But if you look at wide receiver Andrew Marsh, quarterback Bryce Underwood, there are countless guys I could name. But he names Underwood. He names Marsh, right? He's talking about offensive linemen. He's talking about those guys stepping up as part of the youth movement, and he just decides to add Underwood into the mix. Very interesting there. They're all seeing gains, and they're all doing a really good job. It's been really cool. So again, we're working through summer workouts at this point where the players are not really interacting with their position coaches. They're dealing directly with the strength and conditioning staff. So Tress here asked a lot about youth movement up front, offensive line. He talks about two guys he really likes. He talks about the group as a whole, does a good job just making sure he's saying everybody's doing great. But then he throws an Underwood, right? That's a really good sign right there. The fact that Bryce Underwood, as a young quarterback, young player, is working his butt off in the weight room, working his butt off in conditioning drills, making sure he's getting off the great start, being very well prepared to be the day one starter for Michigan come this fall. And I think that's absolutely critical because as much as the Wolverines had a good finish to the season and they won some games they probably shouldn't have, I look at USC, they had some flaws when it came to throwing the football, to put it mildly. And to be really honest about it, they were quite horrible. The fact that they won the games that they did is sort of an indication of their talent level and coaching. I think that's a sign with better passing. They'll be a significantly better football team. Let's pull up this chart here to kind of highlight what I'm talking about. So this is sort of a scatter graph for you guys here, correlating passing grade according to PFF in the Big Ten. That's on the x-axis, and we've got the wins that the team got during the season. That's on the y-axis, and that blue line, that light blue line right there, that's the trend. So you can see the trend is pretty clear. The better passing grade you have, the more wins you have. And you see that red arrow on the screen right there. That is the biggest aberration in terms of getting away from the trend line in this entire graph, and that is the Michigan Wolverines. They won 8 games last season despite having a mid-50s passing grade according to PFF. That is absolutely bonkers, right? Not just for the Big Ten, but for college football in general. That normally doesn't happen. That normally can't happen. That's an indication of Michigan's coaching. That's an indication of Michigan's leadership. Their culture, Sherrone Moore continuing that, was built under Harbaugh, plus the talent level, plus the overall construction of the roster. The good news is for Michigan, if they're at 8 wins with that level of passing, if they improve to, say, 70, 75 passing, they don't have to be elite, right? They don't even have to be in the 80s or the 90s. If they just get to sort of baseline competency, they can go from 8 wins to 11 wins. If their talent, if their coaching has them at 8 wins, again, at that red dot, all the way above the line where they should be based on their passing grade, if they improve the passing grade, then you could say the pattern would dictate they will also improve the wins in a corresponding fashion, going from 8 wins last year with a terrible passing game to maybe even 11 wins, maybe more, this year with just an average passing game. And if Bryce Underwood turns into something special, which he might be, he could be, we're talking about a special elite Wolverine squad. This is what's so interesting about Michigan. People are kind of sleeping on them a little bit. They saw how they played last year, and people just, they didn't look good, right? They couldn't throw the football at all. Just looked bad a lot of the time. Had some good wins, but they're kind of ugly, feisty wins based on defense and running the football. The good news for Michigan, though, is they still won 8 games, even though they were terrible. Again, if they get to some baseline level of competency at passing, they're a top 10 team. They're a playoff team again. We hear a lot about Oregon. We hear a lot about USC doing good things. Ohio State, of course, being mentioned a lot. Penn State's being mentioned all the time as well. You even have some up and comers like Nebraska, who we think has a lot of potential as well. But people need to avoid sleeping on this Michigan team because, as bad as they were passing, the most important part of the game today, they still won 8 games last year. If they're better at passing, they're going to win a whole lot more than 8 games this year. And it doesn't take it doesn't take too many more wins to get back in the Big Ten title conversation, to get back in playoff conversation. Michigan is a lot closer to contention than people think. A lot of it hinges on Bryce Underwood, but again, the strength and conditioning director, what he's described is any indication, Underwood is preparing himself to be the day one starter. And if he's prepared and ready and lives up to the hype, this Wolverines program could see a massive bump up of wins and return to contention very quickly. All right, Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, but first, Michigan fans, in the comment section below, now's your chance. We're talking about a potential bump up of wins here. Give us your prediction, your final prediction ahead of the season here. Final win-loss total for the Michigan Wolverines. Let us know. Regular season, right? Don't factor in any potential postseason. Let's keep it simple. Regular season prediction, final win-loss total for the Wolverines. Put it in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest out of Michigan?
Yeah, Nick, when you look at Michigan, you look at their grades and what they were able to do last year, I think the word you throw around aberration is like it 100% describes them as a team because you look here and you see Michigan, you go to the overall grade and you're like, okay, top 20 team, they had, 89.8 overall grade. That's pretty good, a solid program out there. And then you go over and you look, you go, well, defense, they had a 93 overall defensive grade, puts them in the top 6 of teams. I wonder how does that factor in here? Well, you go look at their offensive grades, you talk about it, 99th in all of college football as far as their overall offensive grade last year. Like you said, not very good. If they were just average overall on the offensive side of things, this would have been a much different team this year. I think it's a testament to show they did as well as they did last year with the offense being so bad. That's really great news for Michigan because the offense is probably the part of this team that's going to get the biggest upgrade, especially when you have guys like Bryce Underwood in the fold that are already taking off, making impressions on everyone so far. And anyone who's been around any college football locker rooms, any amount of time whatsoever, knows the strength and conditioning guys. Those are usually the straight shooters. Those are guys that are going to come out. You really got to impress them. They're no holes barred. If you're not doing anything, they're not throwing compliments around just for anybody. So, offhanded comment as it may be, the fact that Bryce Underwood's name thrown in there, I think that means a lot, and I think that shows a lot as far as what this team is getting out of a kid like Bryce Underwood, number one prospect in the country, number one quarterback in the country. He's living up to the expectation, very high expectations, a lot of pressure on him. No one would be giving him his flowers if he didn't deserve it, especially a strength and conditioning coach. But I think overall, so far for Michigan, a lot to like. And I think we're going to see, like you said, if we're going from 99 to 50, we're talking probably last year, like we're talking 11 wins. Like if we can get the offense from 99th in the country to 50, but I expect this team to be in the top 20 offensively with what they're getting at the quarterback position, everything coming together. This is a team that I think is going to make significant gains. I think 99th is a little bit of an aberration. I think it was a down year offensively for them. Defense really carried them, but I think we're going to see a huge jump, return to a norm for the offensive side of things, and then we're going to see some talent in Bryce Underwood. Not going to quite be, top 10, top 5 team. I think it's going to take another year or so to get into that rhythm. But I think with the addition of Bryce Underwood, we're already hearing great things about him. This offense is going to spike. The defense is already very, very good. We all know that. Carried this team last year as the rankings show. But overall, Michigan in a very good place. I'm excited to see what goes on for the rest of this offseason. Then when the season starts as well, this is going to be a team to watch. And I think a team that can do some really sneaky stuff come around the postseason time of things.
Yeah, the interesting thing for Michigan, especially if they go with Underwood as a starter, if they make that decision, which I think we all agree they probably should, barring something surprising happening in training camp, is their schedule, while not super hard at the beginning, does offer some challenges, right? They open up with New Mexico at home, should handle that. But then they go to Norman, Oklahoma. Oklahoma isn't elite right now, but that's still a tough place to play. Ask the Alabama Crimson Tide. They've got a new quarterback. Venables is a smart defensive coordinator who runs the whole team there. That could be a challenge. 2 weeks later, you're going to Nebraska. Like I said, Nebraska, Matt Rule, he's doing his rebuild thing. They're a more dangerous squad. Then 2 weeks after that, you're going to Los Angeles to play USC, right? So there's going to be a lot of challenges the first half of the season for Michigan. And I think if they can get off to a good start, if Underwood is truly ready, which again, based on the reporting, it sounds like he's pretty close to that, then this can be a dangerous team because, again, some level of improvement, returning to some regression to the mean, if you want to use statistical term, go from being the aberration to what is normally expected with a roster this talented, with halfway competent quarterback at least. They should be able to handle their business and get a lot of wins on the board early, setting up once again will be an end of the year showdown against Ohio State for a lot of potentially Big Ten championship game opportunities and playoff berths. There's a lot of things to be excited about right now for the Wolverines. I think a lot of people are sleeping on this program just because they kind of have the eye test lingering of how ugly it was at times for Michigan last season. If Underwood can step up and be ready, we're going to see the opposite very early on for this Wolverine squad, and that makes them a dangerous foe for any competition in the Big Ten. Again, they're going to make a lot of noise if Underwood is ready, and based on all reporting, we've seen nothing yet that's any sort of red flag with Underwood. Now we've got something from the strength and conditioning coach as well. He's been checking every single box. I think he'll be ready, and if he is, this is going to be a very powerful force because the rest of the roster, the rest of the coaching staff, and the culture is in a good spot.